Hey guys, something a small little bit different today. Recently, I was looking on YouTube and a YouTuber who I've subscribed to, Toy Soldier Review. If you haven't subscribed to him, I would suggest that you do. He does great reviews, kind of inbox reviews of soldiers and stuff like that. But he did a review on the Airfix 172 or 176 scale Japanese infantry from World War II. And I thought, God, I was pretty sure I had painted up a set of those at one point in time. And I said I would do a review on them. And then I discovered that no, I hadn't. I actually had them, but I didn't paint them up. What I had painted up was actually a selection of Airfix knockoff or bootleg Japanese soldiers. And these are those there. I did a rapid fire battalion quantity of them at the time, which is roughly 50. And the reason I had done them was actually for experimental purposes. I was trying out Null and Oil by Citadel. I wanted to see how it worked out, and I used these guys as my test bed. So basically, the Airfix Japanese infantry were released in the 60s, and they're not the best, I don't think myself. They're kind of showing their age a little bit now at this stage, and just are a little bit long in the tooth, as they say. So from that perspective, they're not the best, but I will be using some of them for conversions for Airfix Italian infantry. But that's another day's video. But so these guys here are actually a bootleg or knockoff copy, basically, of the Airfix 132 set. And I have to say they're actually better than Airfix's own smaller scale guys, which is a terrible thing to say, but however, they actually are. Because the detail on them isn't too bad for knockoffs, and size-wise, they are fairly comparable with most modern soldiers in that particular scale. Now, the detail isn't magnificent, but it's not too bad. So let's have a little look here. Say, for example, this guy here, who is the marching infantryman. If we can just get that to focus a small bit, it's just not going to cooperate, is it? But as I say, the detail isn't bad. The pose is lovely, and the knockoffs basically represent everything that's in the 132 set, which don't normally find with knockoffs. But there you go. So that's the guy marching with his rifle. The rifles actually didn't come out too bad in the mold. A lot of the time in these knockoffs, they tend to be a little bit mangled. The machine gun here on the front, the prone machine gunner, didn't come out so well, it has to be said. The gun itself is a bit poorly, and the barrel isn't great and that, but it still does the job. As you can see, the flock is coming off those guys, because normally I give them a little bit of hairspray, but as I said, this was just an experimental set. But I must get around to doing that. There's the rifleman there, standing rifleman. Looks pretty good. As I say, detail is okay. A little bit of flash on them. Will need a bit of a trim with a blade. Advancing infantryman to bayonet. Love that pose, actually. That's pretty cool. He's really moving, really coming at you with that thing. Don't want to be anywhere near that guy. And then you have the knee mortar here, which of course obviously wasn't to be used against your knee unless you wanted a broken leg. But nice little figures for what they were. I got those guys in a big, huge bag of stuff that I got on eBay one time. I was actually getting some soldiers for my young lad who you've come across in videos here before. Because I just didn't really want to be giving him a load of guys I'd paid for or that I'd painted. And basically I spotted some stuff on eBay, which was a collection of all sorts of bits and bobs. And there was about 200 of these guys in the mix. So I ended up taking about 50 or 60 of them out, and just using them for, as I say, practice purposes with the Null or Null and Oil by Citadel, which is for shading, of course, as you can see. So that's basically those guys. Guy at the back there waving the flag is actually a weird, that wasn't an Airfix idea. They basically, whoever was doing these in Hong Kong or China or someplace, basically just put a bit of a flag on the side of the officer's sabre here, to give a sort of an extra figure in the range, which, well, thoughtful was a bit odd, but hey, there you go. So that's those guys. I also did a little bit of converting, because if you've seen any of my videos, you know I do like to convert things. So basically here I used the officer, took the sword off him, and the knee mortar guy, took the mortar out, and basically manufactured a supposedly a mortar there. Now I must replace that with something that is more mortaresque in the future. This was just, as I say, experimental purposes for conversions and shading and things like that. But as I say, at the same time, with another hour or two's work, I reckon these guys will be quite serviceable for any Pacific campaigns. Now, they do come in a range of plastic colours, if you ever come across them. You'll find them in kind of a yellowy green, kind of a tan colour as well. There is, generally speaking, a large amount of flash on them, but a little bit of due care and attention with a fine blade, and you will be doing fine yourself. So that's those. As I say, a little bit rough, but quite handy if you're kind of building up a large Japanese army and you just want a little bit of variation on the table, and you have a little bit of patience as regards trimming flash and just tidying things up a little bit, and for conversion purposes and stuff like that, quite handy. Now, as I say, they are in 172, I suppose, really is the best way to describe it, or close as. Whereas the old Airfix guys, there is the Airfix officer there. So considerable, I think, size difference in those. Having said that, the Airfix ones are on the left there are actually quite small. Whereas as regards to true 172, the knockoff guys are actually only fractionally larger at best, or at worst even. So from that perspective, not a major issue, I would have thought myself. As I say, I wouldn't really be using an awful lot of Japanese anyway, because it's actually normally the European theatre of operations that I work in. So from that perspective, it isn't something that would overly concern me. But it's just nice to have them. As I say, I remember them as a kid. In the 132 version, you could get kind of knockoff guys of these as well. The exact same kind of colour plastic as that guy there in the centre. In fact, I don't actually think I ever had the original Airfix 132 guys. I think I only ever had them in the Hong Kong version. And you can see the guy marching there, and you can see the Airfix guy on the side there. As I say, these Airfix guys, I'm actually going to convert a lot of these to Italian infantry. But as I say, that's a review for another day. But as I say, the detail isn't shockingly bad. There's stuff being released today that is actually far worse. I won't name brands, but I think you probably know who I'm talking about. And Airfix themselves are a little bit guilty of that kind of thing as well, as releasing old stuff. I mean, these Japanese guys on the right here in the tan, they're still readily available, and to be perfectly honest, they've really kind of run their course as far as I'm concerned. I think Airfix should just resculpt a lot of that old stuff. But anyway, that's my opinion. As I say, nice lively poses in the original 132 scale, a scale down here for the knockoff 172s. So that's basically it, guys. That's just a quick look at that. I don't normally, as I say, deal in knockoff or bootleg stuff. The odd time, if I spotted something that I really liked, I might, or if I wanted just a couple of repeats of a certain thing. For example, the Airfix, again, they're often copied. Airfix Africa Corps Officer, the really classic pose with the guy waving with the binoculars to his face or his eyes. I've used a few of those knockoff ones for artillery commanders and tank commanders and stuff like that. Because if you can find them in a bunch of stuff on eBay or whatever, it's handy just to have them. And most of the time, the quality on them isn't too bad. In fact, on the Airfix Africa Corps bootleg ones, I have the details actually better than on these Japanese guys. So, there you go. And I've also used, or will be using, should I say, I'm doing some Airfix US Marines or US Infantry, depending on what they're titled and the boxing that you pick up. And the guy advancing with the 45 pistol and his arm waving isn't done in the smaller scale, even though it was done in the 132. But it is done in a knockoff, guys. So I will be utilizing one of those in my rapid fire battalion of Airfix US Marines. So that basically is my very quick little look at these little knockoff guys. As I say, they're not the best, but they're not the worst. I think they're probably actually a little bit better than some of the original Airfix ones. I mean, some of the detail on some of the Airfix ones isn't bad once you get in tight with the camera and have a quick look at them, but they are quite small. So I mean, they're usable enough if painted up decently, but a little bit old in that. There are better sets out there. Actually, my favourite set is the Matchbox set, so you can check out my review on that if you would. Like and subscribe and all that business. So in the meantime, guys, I will leave you with that little view of the Airfix knockoff or bootleg version in 172. All the best, guys. See you again.